Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Tiger webinar featuring the topic Pride Month, being queer at RIT. My name is Victor Santiago. I'm the Associate Director for Affinity and Reunions here at RIT, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. Happy Pride, last few days of that. And we're happy to have you join us, as we'd like to extend our best wishes to you all, especially those in the RIT alumni community and the RIT members. And as we continue to weather this new environment during the pandemic. For all of the alumni joining us today, please know that the Office of Alumni Relations is available to help you with a variety of needs, including new virtual content, learning opportunities, and networking and career assistance. We especially encourage everyone to connect with the RIT Alumni Association social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, where you will find up-to-date communication opportunities to connect with the university and to the other alumni in your region and your industry. Those links are in the chat box. To your right, the chat box can be opened by clicking on the chat tab at the right of your webinar window. Many in our RIT family have asked how they can help our students and the university as we respond to the pandemic, and we're very grateful for those offers. There are two ways you can help. First, our new graduates and current students are seeking positions for full-time careers and co-ops. Many of those positions have been delayed or canceled entirely. If your company is hiring or would consider adding a co-op post, please contact Chris Steeler in RIT's Career Services office and allow her to post the position in our career system. Her information is in the chat box. In addition, there is now an unprecedented need for financial aid and scholarships for current and incoming students. If you're able and willing to help our current students, please consider making a gift at the link in the chat box. Thank you. We want to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the presentation tools. If you're joining from a remote location and are currently signed into your company's VPN, we encourage you to close that channel during the webinar to increase the quality of your transmission. The webinar platform is secure without VPN. All attendees have joined in mute mode. However, your questions can be entered in the chat box at any time throughout the discussion. We'll make every effort to address all of your comments and questions throughout the webinar. Live captioning is being provided, and you can find the link to access that in the chat box as well. This webinar will be recorded and made available, complete with captions, in approximately about a week following today's events. All participants will receive an email with the link to the recording. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type those in the chat box as well, and we'll do our best to get you the appropriate answers. Now, to the main event, Pride Month being queer at RIT. We're so pleased to welcome the following presenters with us. First, we have Dr. Christopher H. Hinesley. Pronouns are he, him, his. He currently oversees the Q Center, located in the Student Alumni Union at RIT. In addition to his work in student life, Chris teaches courses in gender and sexuality from feminist, intersectional perspective, specifically centered around queer and trans spectrum life experiences. Chris received his BS in exercise science and MS in wellness management from Ball State University, and later received his education doctorate in executive leadership from St. John Fisher College. We now also have Dr. Kelly Kamish. Pronouns are she, her, hers. She is the Assistant Director for Programming, Education, and Outreach for the Center for Women and Gender. Kelly served as one of the co-chairs for the Sex and Healthy Relationships Wellness here at RIT, and is currently the advisor for the Rescue Shelter Club, a club dedicated to donating time and resources to local animal shelters. Kelly received her BA in Sign Language Studies from Madonna University, her MA in Higher Education for Student Affairs from Eastern Michigan University, and her educational doctorate in Higher Education for the University of Rochester. And we have students joining us today as well. The first is Shine DeHarder. Pronouns are she, her, hers. She's a fourth-year biomedical science major and psychology minor from Jamestown, New York, about 2.5 hours from RIT. She is currently the 2020-2021 Student Government President. Previous to her current elected role, she was the College of Health Sciences and Technology Senator. Outside of RIT, Shine is an emergency medical technician, or EMT, for the American Medical Response Team here in Rochester. And last but certainly not least, Emi Simpson. Pronouns are they, them, theirs. Third-year computer science major from Salem, Massachusetts. They're currently the president for OUTspoken, a major student organization that represents the LGBTQIA+ community in RIT student government. Previous to OUTspoken, They worked and participated in Tangent, focused on transgender students. In addition to this role, they participate in the Student Environmental Action League team at RIT, where they are also the president of the club. We're very excited to have all of you with us today. Thank you, Kris, Kelly, Shine, and Emi for joining us. Without further ado, I'll pass the floor to Kris.
Thanks, Victor. And thanks, everybody, for coming to our webinar and to our other presenters. I also think that this will be captioned, and somehow that will be available. Victor, just to check in, I'm not sure if you're still there, but if you can remind us how that works if people need to see the captions.
Yes, so if your chat box is not open on the right side of your screen, please do so. There'll be a caret at the top. And then there is a link where it says, here's the link for live stream captioning. And you can click on the real-time text. And then again, this webinar will be available about a week after with actual captioning, and you'll get an email with the recording as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as Victor mentioned, I'm Kris Hinesley. I am responsible for the Q Center, which is our LGBTQ plus resource center on campus. It's actually a space with a library, some offices, and we have been a thing on campus since about 2007, 2005. I think the idea was hatched and some space was identified. Then around 2014, we moved into our current space, which is in the lower level of the SAU. And it's a pretty nice space. We utilize it with a drop-in area so students can come in and meet each other, socialize, plan their club meetings, and things like that. And then we usually have a peer mentor on staff, another student worker who can help students one-on-one with resources that they might need or club support. Recently, the Q Center was listed as one of the most LGBT-friendly colleges and universities. And that designation, I'm not totally sure how they arrived at that decision, but there is also another index called the Pride Index that I'm much more familiar with, and we actually get rated every year or two on that as well. And we score really well and continue to improve over the years. I want to show you, this is kind of a very dense list of things, but this shows you kind of the depth of what we've been working on campus for years and years to build services and support and really improve the climate for queer students and trans students on campus so that they feel like they can focus on their academics and have fun and do the things they need to do without worrying about things like, how do I change my name and can I find an appropriate roommate? And so we have worked really hard to make these all of these services possible and accessible to students. So you can kind of browse the list. I don't need to read them all, but one of the things that has been the hardest has been the name change process. As you can imagine, there are many, many different IT systems on campus that don't all interact with each other. So if you change your name in one place, it might pop up in another as the wrong name. So we have pretty much gotten that under control. There are still occasions where we find gaps, but that's just one example of the kind of behind the scenes things that we work on at the Q Center and with many other departments. Another example is Safestone training. So we keep our employees up to date as far as what they can be doing to support our students in a whole variety of ways. One thing I'll highlight is that students really advocated for having hormone replacement therapy available to them in our student health center right on campus. So that has been available now. I think we're going into our second year, might be third, I've lost track. Seems so normal now. So that students can present themselves at the health center and ask for advice and understanding the implications of doing that and whether it's right for them. We also just recently added a mental health specialist specializing in working with LGBTQ students, and that has been a real exciting change in the Q Center, because that we actually dedicate an office, one of our office spaces, to that person. And that has been really, really great for the students. The student feedback has been really good. Our Interfaith Center, I think, has become more and more inclusive over the years, and especially in the last couple of years, we do lots of cross-programming. In addition to the Center for Women and Gender, we work with fraternity and sorority life, and spirituality and religious life, and that just continues to expand and expand the number of offices and departments and clubs, and the way that queer students can access everything they want to access on campus, and know that, walk in confidently, that it's going to be a queer-friendly space. This is just gives you a snapshot of all the colleges and universities in the U.S., 5,300 or so of them. There are only 450 that confirm that they actually have some form of services for LGBTQ students. And of those, that's a national number. But in New York State, there are only 13 colleges or universities that have actual resource centers, like a Q Center, like we have. So we have a very special arrangement at RIT to have a Q Center, to have professional staff, to have widespread Safestone training and embedded services in so many of our departments across campus. So I think in addition to the growth on the sort of inclusion and welcoming climate sort of side, there's also the student side, and that student advocacy has made so much of this happen. And one of the big changes I've noticed, this comes back around to changing the name, and I just show people this is exactly how you do it. You go to this web page, which is this welcome to start.rit.edu. You can see right there, and then the arrow points to the one button you have to push, Relay, to change your name on campus, which is really cool, and it goes right into my courses so that faculty members see within 24 hours that name change and the correct name, so that they can start off with students in the right frame of mind that I'm calling you by your correct name from day one in whatever your class is. And then I wanted to highlight this page because when I started at RIT about a dozen years ago or so, there were 2 clubs and a third one was starting, and OUTspoken was that third club actually, which is a different kind of club. It's more of an organization than a club. But anyway, so today we have something like 11 different organizations on campus, and that's just happened really over the last 12 years or so. So as you can see, there's lots of diversity visually in the club logos. There's also a lot of diversity in what they represent. So our queer students of color are represented. OUTspoken is represented, and that is the organization that's tied to student government to advocate and represent queer students on campus. A-Space is for a romantic, asexual spectrum students. The Q Caucus is actually an employee group that we organized so that we could talk about issues that affect us as employees and ways that we can also be kind of an advocating force for the students who have issues that they want us to work on, and support student events like Rainbow Graduation and Orientation. I'll just run through the rest of these. Labras is for queer women. Deaf Queer Alliance is kind of a GSA, a Gay Straight Alliance, but it's located at NTID, but open to everyone. NB represents non-binary students. RITCA is the oldest organization, actually the oldest club on campus, and it stands for the RIT Gay Alliance originally, and today it's GLBTQIA Alliance. They changed the name, but the logo stays the same. And then Tangent, and Emi will talk a little bit more about Tangent in a few minutes. But Tangent is the club for students who are either questioning or are identifying as trans or non-binary in some way. So Tangent was the first club that I helped the students start. It really wasn't me. It was just, students wanting to start this about, I want to say 10 years ago already. And it was really two students who had this vision, and they would show up at their meeting place every week, waiting and hoping other students would show up. And sometimes no one did, and they stayed with it. And today it is one of the largest clubs that we have. It's just exploded in numbers. So it's a real success story that students really realized they saw the need for trans students to talk to each other and to support each other. And that tradition is carried on all the way through today. So I'm gonna pass the baton to Kelly and just kind of pause for a second and tell you, if you have questions for me or for any of us, at any time you can put those questions right in the question area. Hopefully you can see that if you open that sidebar, and Victor will help facilitate us all answering those questions. You can ask a question of any of us, and we'll do our best to answer it. So thank you.
And thank you, Kris. As Kris mentioned, I'm Kelly Kamish, and I oversee the Center for Women and Gender. So our office was established in 1998. So we've been around a little bit longer than the Q Center, but not much. And like Kris, our office is actually, like Kris mentioned with the Q Center, our office is actually one of very few. So there are only across the country about 400 offices like ours. And so it's pretty unique, and there are no other schools in our area, in the Rochester area, that offer services like ours in a Center for Women and Gender. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are. So we are the primary resource for women on campus, but we are open to all students regardless of gender. And our team consists of an assistant director, who's myself. I focus on programming, education, and outreach. We have an embedded counselor advocate from Counseling and Psychological Services, and her focus is really on interpersonal violence and working with survivors of sexual assault. And then we have a team of student workers, and our student workers help us keep the office running. We do a variety of things. I think that these are the things that we do the most. So we host programs, and a lot of the programs that we host focus on the topics of healthy relationships, gender-related issues or concerns, and interpersonal violence prevention. We work with groups in their effort to be more gender inclusive. So something that we've seen the past few years that's been a trend is there are more groups that are wanting to be inclusive in their practices, in being more open to trans, non-binary folks. So this has been a great trend that we're seeing, and each year more and more groups are moving in that direction. They're looking at their constitutions, they're looking at their policies, and so that's something that our office will help them with, is help them kind of figure out how to be more inclusive and maintain identity at the same time. And then we work with students who need additional support for any interpersonal issues or gender concerns. So sometimes this is somebody comes in because they had a breakup and they just need to talk, or they're having a really hard time communicating with a roommate and they want some coaching on how to do that, or they might be having self-esteem issues and they want some coaching on that. And then we do have people who come to us and ask about the name change process, and they ask about what resources we have for trans students. And so we work very closely with the Q Center to make sure that we have accurate information to give to students as well, and help students get through that process. And then how do we serve LGBTQ plus students specifically? So we really, our office has always been open to all students, and we always pride ourselves on being an inclusive space. To be more inclusive to the gender diversity of our students, we've removed all gendered language from our programming. So we do a lot of programs around healthy relationships and interpersonal relationships, and we have removed any type of gendered language from those because we understand that that doesn't reflect all of our students. We have a legacy leadership program, so students graduating, and historically it's been graduating women, are able to apply to be a legacy leader to talk about, they have to explain the legacy that they're leaving at RIT, and it's an honor that they get at graduation, and we have a special event that we recognize these folks at. And it's always been open if the person who's trans or non-binary wanted to apply for it. But this year, we actually explicitly changed all of our definitions to include folks who are in the trans community, because we want to encourage folks to apply for it, because we know that we have some amazing student leaders that are doing great things, and we don't want any student leader to see that and say, that's not for me, that was for women. And then we also collaborate with LGBTQ plus student groups, and we'll tailor our programs to fit their needs. So like I mentioned before, a lot of what the programs we do focus on healthy relationships and interpersonal violence prevention. And we know that those are topics that are really important in the LGBTQ plus community. And it's really important that our students know where their resources are and they're able to identify when things aren't going well. We talk about how do you navigate dating when your dating pool is much smaller and everybody knows each other. So we have some conversations that are really specific to the community and really help us. I think it really helps our students navigate some of these more tricky interpersonal issues. There really aren't a whole lot of classes that students take on things like dating and breakups. It's really, they're awkward, hard conversations to have. And then when you have an extra layer of not knowing where you can get support, where you're going to be welcomed, then that can make it even more difficult. And then we have different opportunities for students to be involved or to use the services in our center. So we have a student action board, and they address gender-related issues on campus and within the community. So this is a partnership with student government. Student leaders can request to have programs or trainings for their groups. So we'll come in and do trainings with RAs, we'll come in and do trainings with student clubs, fraternities, sororities, and they can request that if they think that there's something that people aren't getting or they feel like there is a need, they'll sometimes pull us in. And then students can receive one-on-one support for gender-related concerns. So this could be anything from I'm trying to figure out my gender identity to I don't think I'm being treated fairly because of my gender. And we're there to help. If it's not something that we can help with, we'll always find the right person to get students to. And now I think we're going to turn it over to our students.
Great. So thank you, Kris and Kelly. And again, just to reintroduce them, today we have Shine, DeHarder, and Emi Simpson representing students. Again, Shine is the current elected student government president, and Emi is the current elected OUTspoken president. So we ask that Shine and Emi, if you can just talk about your experience as a student here on campus and how you feel supported, and as well as what are you going to do within your current role within the student organizations that you are presidents for the LGBTQIA plus students.
Hi, yeah, so I had the privilege of coming out at RIT, which was an amazing experience, and I was lucky to do it in a community that was accepting as it was. In fact, the first thing I did when I came out was go to the Q Center office, and I asked about resources that were available for trans and gender questioning individuals. And I was immediately pointed to Tangent, and I was very lucky that I even had that opportunity to talk with a resource like that, and that was a really amazing experience. I then spent a lot of time with Tangent, and for those of you who don't know, Tangent is a support group style club for trans, gender questioning, non-binary students at RIT. And so in addition to running weekly support group style meetings, they also handle a lot of trans-specific events like Trans Day of Visibility for students. And so the community at Tangent is one of the most amazing communities I feel I've ever been a part of. And I met a lot of really longtime friends there, and the people there helped me work out a lot of things about myself and who I wanted to be. And also were a huge help in navigating all of the processes at RIT. Thanks in part also to all of the work that's been done by all of the groups on campus, both students and faculty, made my transitioning process a lot smoother. So I was able to change most of the systems on campus using the preferred name systems that have been set up. I was able to start medically transitioning at RIT thanks to the informed consent clinic that was established in the Student Health Center. And after a period of time, I realized I wanted to kind of do more. So I was already working a lot with the leadership of Tangent, and I helped arrange a couple of events with them. But I also wanted to do more. So this year, I ran for the office of OUTspoken, and am now president of that. So OUTspoken, if you don't mind, I'll say a little bit more on that, is a student group for all of the LGBTQ students on campus in any identity. And so our first and foremost, our purpose is representatives. So we represent the students of RIT to the student government body, as well as to RIT's administration as a whole, so faculty, staff, and higher up administration as well. But we also have roles in coordinating other clubs. So there's a lot of different clubs on campus, you've already seen. And that's an amazing thing. But a lot of times what happens is students will only make a commitment to one or two clubs, which is fantastic that they can find a club that really fits their interest and best serves them. But that's where OUTspoken comes in. So in order to make sure that students are kind of in part of a united community, OUTspoken helps to facilitate events between different groups. So we run Committee, which is a leadership committee of all of the different clubs, which helps share events, share resources, share information between all of the different clubs, meaning if one club is scheduling an event, the whole queer community knows about that and shares that around like that. And OUTspoken itself also runs our own events. So we have Pride Prince, which is a Pride-style festival sort of thing that happens on National Coming Out Day each year. Q-Fest, which is a tabling event that all LGBTQ students at RIT can come to and become familiar with the different LGBTQ clubs on campus that they might not have known about, or maybe they've heard about them and not really interacted with them. And so that gives students an opportunity to learn more about the different clubs and resources that are available to them, as well as running ally events like Do You Understand the Rainbow, which is a panel-style event that helps educate allies on campus on what it means to be an ally and what the best way to help serve the LGBTQ community is. And so I'm really lucky to be a part of OUTspoken this year, and I want to do a lot more to help grow the LGBTQ community at RIT. And so I'm working, in particular, I'd like to work on growing accessibility within the LGBTQ community, as well as helping establish more gender-neutral spaces on campus that might have previously not been available or accessible to trans and non-binary students. Yeah, and so I'm really looking forward to making RIT an even more accepting space than it already is. Thank you. Shine?
Hi, I'm Shine, and I am now a fourth year biomedical sciences student, and I was lucky enough to be able to come out when I was come out. I feel like I would say more so it was more just a conversation because I've always grown up with a really accepting family, which I'm more than grateful for. That one day I just happened to be learning to drive and I was talking to my mom and I was just like, hey, we were talking about how sexuality is a spectrum, and I told her that I liked men and women, and it was more just okay, cool. So I was lucky enough to have that basis growing up throughout my entire life. But even in high school, I fit more into a cisgender, just kind of dressing more heteronormative, and didn't really feel like it was the best space to sort of express my sexuality. But it feels like as soon as I got to RIT, I knew exactly that was where I was supposed to be, and immediately felt way more comfortable with experimenting with different things and my style and switching everything up. And I think that a lot of that just has to do with the community that's here at RIT. I remember being a freshman, walking down the quarter mile to class and starting to see all of the protests for HRT being brought back to campus. And then that was really my first experience with student government, because I hadn't really been on top of paw prints up until that point. But then I saw everyone signing this petition and pushing it forward, and I started to look more into that and to see how petitions work, and I started to realize the power that student government had on campus, where I feel like I imagined that it would be something more alike to like a high school student government where you plan events, but you don't really have any upper administration contact. So I thought about joining student government then, but I feel like I took my first 2 years at RIT to kind of just make sure I was on some stable footing and get like my academics and stuff down and get a solid group of friends. And then towards the end of my sophomore year, I decided that I wanted to be involved. So I ran for the College of Health Sciences and Technology Senator. And it was almost immediate that once I started, so I served my junior year as the senator. As soon as I started, it was like the thing I'd been missing. And the only thing I regretted about not getting was not getting involved sooner. I knew that just like every time I walked into that office, it was an amazing group of people that were all like super accepting of everyone and anything. And it was like a place where you could sit down and have a conversation about whatever came to your mind. And almost right away, I started to realize that I needed to be even more involved than I already was, as I started to see even more so the impact that student government has here at RIT. We are one of the 3 major legislative bodies, which means that we are student government represents the student body, and then there's staff council and academic senate. So one to represent staff and one to represent faculty. And so every major piece of legislation goes through student government to get its approval for a senate to be brought forward. And seeing how paw prints worked even more so from the backside, and seeing all the petitions come through, and sitting in on a few different meetings with representatives from other private colleges around the state, where they would say, looking for help, just advice, talking about how they weren't able to get meetings with these higher up administration, and that they were really trying to make impactful change, but just didn't have that opportunity. And I was on the call with Anika, who was last year's president, and we really sat down afterwards and just kind of had to appreciate the influence that we have and the ability that we end up going to Munson's for like a Halloween party, and have a lot of, I sit in on the board of trustees. There's just a lot more direct action that we have opportunity to, that some students at other colleges just don't have. So running for president, I ran with my vice president, Jared Ortega. And one of the key pillar points that we had was working on diversity and inclusion at RIT, because as we've all discussed, RIT is like pretty inclusive, but there's always work to be done. And I remember before I had even like officially announced that I was going to be running, I went to OUTspoken office and sat down with Kris and Ryan, and I was planning on hopping in for like 20 minutes to just kind of talk and get some ideas on how I could better represent our LGBTQ plus students on campus, because I have a limited perspective. And so I'm always focusing on trying to seek out voices that may not be heard to try to represent those. And I think I sat there for Kris, I would guess like 2 hours, talking about anything and everything. And it was just a further like realization that I knew that that was what I was supposed to be doing. I feel like I didn't really get involved my first 2 years, and I missed out on a lot of great clubs and opportunities that I could have been more involved in. But just getting involved with student government and a few other different groups on campus, it's like only skyrocketed me more into going through my own just adventure on life. I was able to go to my first drag show. Like, I just feel like there's been so much more that I've had an opportunity at here at RIT than in my small suburban like town, where there's not all too much going on and there's not many out people. And if they are, they're definitely not walking around with a rainbow pride flag. So being at RIT has been like just the best experience that I could have asked for. And so I think that I have been able to recognize the position that student government plays on campus and the importance of the role, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement. I've already been able to step out and make a statement on that, assuring that we are stepping forward for both our Black community and then even more specifically our LGBTQ plus Black community and all people of color on campus, I have started working with ACA, which represents the Alana community on campus, where we can kind of sit down and start to focus on more direct action. And that's something I plan to do with OUTspoken as well. And then one other point that we've been talking about is having a ad hoc committee, because right now student government has 5 different committees with housing and dining, sustainability, academics and co-ops. Oh man, I shouldn't have started listing them off because I'm going to miss which ones I started with. Academics and co-ops, housing and dining, facilities, parking and transportation, sustainability, and I know I'm missing one, but I can't even quite think of it right now. Sorry about that. But we want to make an ad hoc committee devoted specifically to diversity and inclusion and see if we get those paw prints rolling in so we can help push forward those charges with the power of OUTspoken and ACA so that we can get more impactful change on campus done. So I try to use my influence as this position and seeing someone who is out, and I made sure to have my rainbow little heart pin on and all of my campaign material because I know how important it can be to just be on campus and then be able to look up and see LGBTQ plus members in higher positions of leadership. And so I want anyone that could be incoming or younger to be able to look up and see that like RIT is a place where you can get into those positions of leadership and that it's inclusive. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Emi and Shine, for sharing your experiences. So we'll just roll into the questions portion of today's webinar. And we talked about, Shine, talked about the Black Lives Matter movement. I know there was a town hall that occurred on campus over Zoom. And there was a question that was posted during the town hall that asked about, is the more inclusive pride flag going to be hung instead of the current one that is on display? Has there been a discussion already started? And if so, can anybody talk more about that? Like, what is the more inclusive pride flag? Because I know there was questions about what it was.
Can I take this one?
Right.
So I was asked about that after the town hall, in fact, that same night. And one of the things that's kind of true about our community is that it's very diverse and there's a lot of opinions and it's constantly changing. Our language and our symbology is constantly changing. And so one of the first thoughts was, hey, let's replace the pride flag with the more inclusive pride flag. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. We want to add to, not take away from. So I think what we're going to end up with is a really cool representation of the original pride flag, the black and brown stripes added, more inclusive flag, and then an even newer one than that adds a trans arrow into the whole deal. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all comes together, because they're going to put a Black Lives Matter flag, a deaf culture flag, the Haudenosaunee flag, and the queer flags. So we're going to be the queer one with more than one flag probably, but we're going to try to represent some of the diversity in the community, because I think that has always been a constant struggle as to how do we make sure we're being inclusive. And if we use the pride flag, is that excluding trans people or is that excluding a different group? And so our goal is to make it look cohesive, so that people understand, okay, so there was this flag and then there was this one and this one's also happening, and here's the complexity of our community, so-called community. So please add on if anybody has thoughts about it, but that was sort of the end point of where we came to in the meeting for the project itself. The flag, the big flag that we have now, rainbow flag, will be moved into the main SAU lobby, where all the other flags are, and all of those flags will be on one wall, is the way I understand it. It's kind of exciting to see the changes that are going to happen.
So I feel like sometimes the representation of these flags on campus are kind of giving our students that they are more supported here on campus because we have those flags. So talking about safety, I guess this is towards the students. Do you feel safe being at RIT, being able to express your true self on campus?
I can hop in. I know that I definitely have a different experience as someone who may to the like first glance look just like a heteronormative like female. So I feel like as someone who presents like that, it can be easier to feel like I'm just passing or fitting in. But even with that, I never felt any backlash or any like even pushback as soon as I started being extremely vocal about being bi and being able to be out. And I feel like even more so, I find more, I don't know if it's just my group of friends, I guess. I feel like I have surrounded myself with the people, not that just support and are all, I don't know, I'm tripping over my own words, but I guess no. I feel like I've always felt comfortable here at RIT, and especially I remember on my tour walking in and seeing the pride flag in its like case and with the little emblem below, which I felt like was always a good sign to see it have its own special space amongst like all the other flags that are hanging, and to have like its little emblem below.
I can also talk. I've always felt very safe at RIT. Even when I was just first starting to come out, just the presence of having so many LGBTQ students on campus and the kind of normalization of LGBTQ identities has been sort of like a comfort blanket to me at all times. I'll go into a class and the professor will ask for pronouns along with names on the first day. I see students everywhere with pride pins. And I've always just felt like I sort of fit in. I never really felt other to the community. And it's my whole experience here, I've just had an amazing experience of feeling like I belonged here. And no one has ever really made me feel other than that.
That is so great to hear. As an alum from the university, I was not out when I was a student, and it's probably because of being afraid, but I'm glad to see that students are very more comfortable to be themselves on this campus. Emi, you mentioned about how your professor would ask for pronouns. How important, this is a question for everybody, how important do you believe the use of pronouns during introductions is? And is there a talk about my courses including that into like a form or something where it's asking for pronouns so that, again, when the first day of classes comes through, everyone knows how to introduce themselves and all
that? Yeah. I think pronouns during introduction is an amazing thing, not just in terms of actual utility, but just in terms of making sure that people know that this is a space that is accepting to that sort of idea. When, as a student who uses pronouns that don't always jive with my expression, or people probably wouldn't assume that I would use they, them pronouns, going into a space and being asked for your pronouns instead of going into a space and having to maybe go out of your way to explain your pronouns or interjecting it into something where other students aren't doing it. Just being asked means that the people who are in that classroom kind of administering the discussion care about that. I've always said one of the best things you can do as like a quick thing to signal that you're an ally is to just give your name and pronouns, give your pronouns with your name when you're introducing yourself. And it's very much true when you're asking other people to introduce themselves too. And then there's also the factor of if in environments where you do ask for your pronouns or ask for other people's pronouns, that's ensuring that, or helping to ensure that they don't get misgendered for the rest of the conversation. People can listen in and tune into those pronouns and then use them, versus otherwise having to ask for them or get them wrong and then be corrected. So I think it's an amazingly important thing, and I'm very glad that so many professors do it.
I want to chime in and just say that in addition to having professors do it, any club that I've been involved in has been sure to, when there are new people arriving that you may not know their name or pronouns, that is just a part of any like introduction, and that it's just included. I played on the women's rugby team, and every single like beginning of practice, if there was anyone new that was hopping on, we would all like circle up and say your name and pronouns and where you're from, major, just to get to know you. But there was never a time that it wasn't included, just to make sure that everyone was on the same page, like as soon as you started, so that no one was getting misgendered.
Great. Speaking of folks being more comfortable, how many Safestone trainings are offered every year, Kris, to faculty and staff to take sometime throughout the year so that they can become champions and support for our students on campus?
That's a good question. It varies year to year. Typically, I do several open sessions, so any employee can come, and it runs through our human resources professional development page, CPD. And then I kind of consider that Safestone Basics is what I call that usually. And then I work with individual departments in colleges. So, for example, College of Science has a major grant program called Inclusive Excellence, and they have been bringing me in year after year several times to train different groups. And then in student affairs, I train multiple departments every year. I don't train every department every year because they just had the material. It's not that different. But I'll go in and do updates with different departments who have already been trained. We're about to launch a series at NTID for faculty and staff this year, and make that very deaf-centric. So I will probably not be the lead presenter. For example, we'll have somebody presenting in ASL, but we'll be feeding them everything we know about what we need to present with Safestone, and then we're converting that really and changing the pedagogy so that it fits deaf culture and deaf learning styles. Other areas that we train different faculty, departments, your department, Victor, Development and Alumni Relations, I've done a couple of times, Captionists, ASL, interpreters. So it's as many as I can work in throughout the year because it's one part of my job, but it's usually at least 2 or 3 dozen trainings, sometimes even more than that. So literally hundreds and hundreds of people receive the training every year. And then there are student groups who will request it, and I will train up our student workers to in the Q Center to go and deliver training to, for example, last year we did all of the student workers who work in the cage over in Booth, I think it is. There's like 60 students who work in that area. And then there are other major kind of student groups that like the fraternity and sorority life. All of those leaders will do either a presentation or a hangout where we do a panel. So we do a lot of trainings, and there's always more to do and always changes to make to it because everything keeps updating. Just like this last week, we had 2 major announcements at the federal level. One is taking away healthcare for transgender people as being included in the Affordable Care Act, and then 2, the SCOTUS Supreme Court decision on admitting that LGBT people should be protected in the workplace, and that we now are included in Title VII, protection from discrimination in the workplace. So everything is kind of a moving target as far as how do we train people on that? How does that relate to Title IX? And I see someone's question about, are there disciplinary procedures for faculty staff who engage in homophobic, transphobic behavior towards students? This is one of the questions coming in right now. And thank you for that question, because of this recent Supreme Court decision, there's now a lot of impetus for employers to say, hey, look, we can't discriminate against LGBT people because now it's, the law of the land. Whereas before it was kind of, we're doing the right thing, and now it's compliance. So that is, we don't have a big problem with that at RIT. Occasionally I'll hear from a student who says, hey, this is happening in the classroom, can you help? And usually it's more of an advocacy, let me talk to the faculty member, or let me empower the student and help them with some words they can use to talk to the faculty member. Generally that's as far as that goes. It's not necessarily disciplinary action that needs to happen. It's more like a conversation and some education around what's the impact of what you're doing, and once the faculty member realizes that, they usually change their behavior pretty quickly. I think I maybe said too much, but that's kind of my answer to your training question.
Yeah, so in addition to that, the whole the question with the homophobic, transphobic behaviors for students, and now with everything being all social media and technology, Kelly, you might also be able to help with this, with students being safe on apps and these relationships that they're these connections are easier to happen, and safety is a really big issue. Could you talk about how Center for Women and Gender, or Q Center, is educating our students on how to be safe on these apps with themselves and with each other?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a big portion of the work that our office does. So a lot of the things that we do these healthy relationship programs, and a lot of them do focus on dating apps and social media because of the fact that that is how a lot of our students are meeting each other. And then when you take a look at our queer students, they're a lot of times meeting each other on dating apps, or they know each other from around the community. If they don't want to date somebody within RIT, really one of the only ways that they're going to meet each other is at a LGBTQ plus event or through a dating app. And these are conversations that we do have about staying safe. With all students, we have the conversations about staying safe, right? So how do you make sure that you can make sure that your friends know where you're going if you're meeting with somebody? How do you make sure that you have a plan? Make sure that you're taking care of each other. Make sure that if you're uncomfortable, you know who to go to and who to talk to. And then for our LGBTQ plus students, it's another layer. If you put yourself in a dating app, you're outing yourself essentially in some ways, right? So if you put yourself in a dating app, there is a chance that you have to out yourself by putting, I'm interested in this person. And so we'll talk about what that means. And then as another layer with social media, we talk a lot about boundaries. And one of the big ones that's really important in the LGBTQ plus community is digital boundaries. You have to ask your friends, is it okay for me to post this picture of us together with this rainbow flag behind us? Is it okay for us to say that we're in a relationship with each other? Is it okay for me to even be friends with you? There's these different boundaries that you have to navigate. And so this is a big part of what we do. And we do a lot of this education really early. So we try to get folks, we work a lot with first year students. We do experiences with the RIT 365 course, and our experiences focus on dating apps and safety around dating apps. And we definitely always address what do you do if you're not out or you're dating somebody who's not out? How does that work? How can you ensure that you're keeping them safe as well?
Fantastic. Thank you, Kelly. And a few more questions because we only have like about 5 minutes or so left. Kris, can you talk more about where the name Q Center came from, and kind of like what your open door hours are? And then since this is kind of targeted towards alums, like how our alums can support the Q Center?
Sure. I love this question about the Q. I was not super happy with the name that I inherited when I started working at the GLBT Center, because it put sort of men first, the G, or at least traditionally that's the way that word's been used. And so I started searching to see what other campuses were doing. Some were just adding letters, GLBTQ, QIA, different versions of that, or LGBT. And I just thought, you know what, this is going to never end with all the letters, and that's good, but it's getting complicated. So I started playing with Q Center as an idea and running it past a lot of people. And what I found was that people were just like, yeah, that's fine. What does it mean? And so I said, well, it can mean queer, obviously, but it can also mean questioning. And I really think the questioning part is where a lot of students pass through that. You know, Emi, you talked about that finding yourself piece. And I think that's where so many students really are when they first visit the Q Center. I also love the symbol of the circle. I call it the circle of community, and where you find your place, and the slash is where you find your place. And I just think that's a beautiful kind of analogy to the way our community works. As far as hours, that's a great question. We are still figuring that out for fall, but I'm available by email, obviously. And I just wrote back to somebody's question. You can reach Robin. You can reach me at qcenter@rit.edu. That's the easiest one to remember. And then we'll be figuring out our fall hours, fall meaning middle of August, very soon. So that will hopefully be posted on our website. Our website is a great entry point into kind of where we are with developing different resources for different kind of groups like parents and students and faculty and staff. And also we try to get our events posted up there as best we can. And as far as for supporting the Q Center, we have several people who have a monthly plan where they are doing a payroll deduction or something like that with a gift. That, of course, a gift is one way. Other ways are to communicate with us and tell us about your experience as a student. Tell us about, what you need as an alum, and how you would like to be connected. Because I think our students are hungry for connections with people who are out in the world doing their thing. And there's a place for that connection to be made if we can make it happen. Occasionally I'll get a volunteer. That's always nice to have somebody help with being there in the Q Center and supporting students in that way. Keeping our office doors open maybe a little bit longer or something like that is always helpful. So there's lots of different things, and I think it's an individual choice, kind of like we can work something out together. If there's a way that you want to figure out how to support us or how to be involved, we can do that together. We also have events that you can attend and things like that.
Well, thank you, everyone. I know there's a lot more questions I personally have to ask everybody as an alum who identifies as being part of the community and part of the Q Caucus with Kris. But we are running out of time. But again, as referenced earlier, if you're looking to support our students in any way, especially if you're looking to make a gift, there are links in the chat box where there is a giving page and it's got specific allocations. But if you want to give it to a specific group, such as Tangent, Deaf Queer Alliance, Queer in Color, and such things like that, you can designate your gift to those as well. If you have any additional questions, they can be emailed to ritalum@rit.edu, and then we'll obviously pass those forward to any of our folk here, of our presenters. Everyone here will receive an email in about a week, again, with the webinar recording. And then if you're looking for other cool virtual events, other webinars from our office, you can go to rit.edu/tigers-staying-home, and that's going to have a listing of our upcoming virtual events. And I do want to highlight two of them coming up in the next 2 days. The first one is the Alumni Town Hall with RIT. That's going to have Dr. Munson and Dr. Keith Jenkins, and that's going to happen tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And then the next one is Tigers Helping Tigers, Moving Students Forward, which is a showcase and a fundraiser, and that's going to be held on Thursday, June 25th at 7 p.m. To register for those events, again, just go to the Tigers Staying at Home webpage. Again, I'd like to thank everybody here, Kris, Shine, Kelly, Emi, for joining me and talking about your experiences and talking about how you're supporting the LGBTQ students on campus. Again, I really appreciate it. And I think there's an alum in our chat that says their heart is so happy with some of the answers that they're hearing and how our students are being supportive. And again, thank you all. To exit from the webinar, all you have to do is simply close the live storm window. Please let us know if you have any thoughts. There will be a brief survey that you will receive via email. Have a great rest of the week, everybody. Stay healthy, stay safe, happy Pride, and go Tigers. Thanks, everybody.